The following is a conversation with one of our co-founders, Gary Daly. Gary is the head of football here at Training to One. For those that don't know, his primary responsibilities are things like our curriculum, session plans and tiering, and as well as that, you can really think of him as everything on the football side of things. He is also the manager of the UCD under-17's team, who compete in the League of Ireland here at underage level, which is the top caliber for underage football in the country. And they also won the league last year, which to some is a massive achievement. To Gary, I suppose, on the mindset of winning isn't everything, is just another string to a young player's development bow. In the conversation, we talk about two main things: his coaching journey from starting as a coach into a management role, and as well as that, getting into the nitty-gritty details of the actual aspects of where he is today. So what made him a great coach and what has made him a great manager as well. Maybe I'm a little bit biased in saying this because I've known Gary since we were kids, but in my opinion, he is definitely within the top percentile of coaches and managers in the country. And I definitely think it is worth a listen to all young coaches and managers who want some sort of insight into getting better. We hope you enjoyed the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoyed this content. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, please feel free to leave anywhere up to a 5-star review. We are delighted to have Financial Planning Matters as our official podcast sponsor. To those that don't know, Financial Planning Matters help individuals secure their financial future. The company is led by a great friend of ours, Niall O'Connor, who is also a UEFA B licensed coach as well, familiar within that football space. Niall has helped me personally secure my financial future by allowing me to get a good understanding of my money management. A couple of small things where he helped me improve were understanding where to put money into specific investments, how to save for my retirement, and as well as that, small little tips and tricks like having an emergency fund and how to budget correctly for those longer term payments. If you want to get in contact with Niall and the team about your financial future, you can reach out to them directly at www.fpms.ie.
Yeah, pull up Wales. True that, brother.
Okay, gentlemen, we are recording.
We're good to go? All right, boom, we're live. We will. Gary, welcome.
Thank you, Gary.
So first one I wanted to ask you, what's your opinion on Noah Lyles, the sprinter, and his comments about the NBA?
Is that a serious question?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't even know what he fully said, to be honest.
So in the interview, this was about 2 years ago, if
he
not
said something
mistaken.
about them to do with it being the World Championship. Was that essentially?
Yeah, he's basically saying the World Champion of what? Like, it's a domestic competition. And
Yeah.
the NBA got butthurt. And I think like a lot of the wider American population got butthurt over it. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of like saying Man City are the world champions because they won the best league in the world at a sport, which still doesn't really make sense, to be honest.
It's simple logic.
Yeah.
Why the hell is everyone so butthurt about it? I don't get it.
Don't know.
Like, I don't live in the States, but I always got the impression looking from the outside that it definitely seems to be like a United States world and we're all living in it. They'd argue that they are the most powerful country, but that doesn't mean like you are the full world.
Are they that much better than everybody else at basketball where it's like, doesn't matter? Like the other, like if they were to a World Cup of basketball, do you think anyone would win it apart from America for the next 20 years?
Probably not. That's a good call. That's actually a good shout out because technically their league is so far ahead that it probably justifies saying that the best team there is the best team in the world. I get that, but it's a very obnoxious thing to say.
You're still not the world champions because you haven't won a international competition.
But I
Doing
think
the Olympics, I suppose they could say America are the Olympic champions, which basically means world champion, doesn't it?
yeah, but I mean Brazil won the Olympics and they weren't the world champions.
Which with the football,
With the football.
Yeah.
Like, it's all about the World Cup.
So
But there is no like World Cup of basketball.
the Olympics is probably the closest, isn't it?
Yeah, and then even I was thinking, with the American team they have this year, they brought out like all the big guns. Whereas I think in the last couple, they only had like one or two, maybe
Who's the
three
coach?
top players. I've no idea who the coach is.
Is it Kerr? No, Steve Kerr.
Dan, can you pull it up there, please?
I think it is.
I think it is Steve Kerr. Yeah, but yeah, it's just another dream team. The coach of the American basketball team for this year's Olympics, I think it is Steve Kerr. He was ex-Warriors, wasn't he? I know he played for the
Current
Bulls.
Warriors, no?
Was he Bulls, no?
He played for the
played
Bulls.
but he's current Warriors. isn't
Still,
he? Yeah,
he's still with them.
Would have thought so. Yeah.
Christ, jeez, he was with them. Like,
Steve Kerr.
is Steve Kerr? Right, great job, Gary.
He's with Warriors. Still, I think he is.
Darren, can you pull that up? Is he still with? Is he still with the Warriors? That'd be very interesting. He did a lot of good work with Golden State.
He is the head coach for Golden State Warriors.
Still, my God, no
I
off
know,
season for
I know
him.
my NBA.
No rest for the wicked.
I don't really, to be honest. That was just the one fact I probably did know.
Yeah, well, no, that's an interesting one. Just as a bit of background, I think for this podcast, Gary is our head of football here at Training 1-to-1. Another co-founder. It's myself, him, and Morgan. Morgan's not here today, but I thought a good topic of conversation would be particularly around Gary's managerial experience in football. I suppose we could probably talk into a little bit about T1-to-1 curriculum as well, but primarily around team management, team coaching, the different roles of being a manager, a coach. I'm going to say a playmaker is probably the word, but someone who actually conducts tactical strategy.
Playmaker.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Get me
saying.
in the 10.
So I want to start with a question for you, Gary. Did you always think you would be a manager?
From when I started coaching.
Yes.
No, I would have thought probably the opposite. I would have thought my strength kind of more lended to being just a coach, whether that was like, let's say, an individual coach in a team, or like third coach in a staff, or an assistant. I know some people say, and it's generally kind of people when they finish up playing a little bit older, that when they want to get into coaching, it's usually, I want to be a manager of whatever team it might be. I never really had the draw to that side of it immediately. And it's funny enough, you were said experience of managing. This is the first time I have managed, bar the school team that me and you done.
Mm-hmm.
Co-managed with you, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Like, so this has been my first year actually experience managing, as in team manager, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I've always been just more into the coaching side of things.
Tell me
But that's
more.
always been the draw, should I say?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Tell me more about why you thought originally that you would just go down the coaching route versus the managerial route.
I think the stories you hear from management is always about like dealing with the other side of things, like, so not necessarily what happens on the grass all the time. Like, you hear the stories about the more traditional managers where someone wouldn't even come out to the training ground on some days. They'd only come out at certain times. Now I know that's very like kind of probably 90s, early 2000s. So, but that was obviously the type of manager that would have been around when we played, or when we were getting into coaching. That was kind of what a manager was said to be. It's just the person who manages, so to speak. Whereas my love of coaching is more actually in the coaching side of it, actually on the grass. So that was probably, now that I think about it, that was probably the main reason. A little bit of like, you just don't know how good you'd be at it, because I'd never, like, let's say, obviously when you first get into coaching, did you go straight into managing a team? You probably did you? Or coach?
No, I was coaching first.
It's generally how everyone gets in, is you'll coach at, whether you're the assistant, whatever, third coach, whatever it might be, just helping out. And then doing that for a couple of years, really like that. And then you nearly like convince yourself like that's you, like that's the kind of player or type of coach I'll be. And I don't know if management will be for me. But that initial reason was probably, I didn't think that the management side would be as fun, in the sense of I didn't think I'd have as much to do on the grass. But obviously that's changed now with like most modern managers are training ground managers more so than the old school style, we'll say.
Mm-hmm. And when you started off originally with coaching, what did you feel you were very good at, and what do you feel now you're very good at? Has there been a change over since when you started to where you are now, on the purely coaching perspective?
I would say the one thing I was always good at was like my manner. I think was always decent with whatever age group I worked with. So naturally, when you start coaching, it's probably like kids groups or summer camps or younger teams, and I always kind of felt I had a good manner for that. And as I've moved and worked with different age groups, I found my manner has adjusted accordingly, and I think that's good, to be honest. I think that's probably one of the most important things. I could be talking absolute tactical nonsense, but if I can convince a player that it's in a good way, that it's a good thing to do, then that's a more important skill set to have than having all the knowledge and having no personality to be able to, I would just say, like, convince somebody. Because at the end of the day, that's what coaching is. It's trying to convince players that the way you want them to play suits them, suits the game plan, and kind of suits the team, for example. But that's probably the big thing at the start. I think I've always kind of had a decent manner with whatever age group, and been able to adjust to different age groups as I've gotten experienced. I know has that changed massively since?
Yeah, have you noticed a big shift in what you're very good at now? Like, manner is always very good, but what have you added to your bowl that you weren't good at originally?
Probably, if I was to have a team, or let's say you went to me when I first started coaching, right? Coach up to whatever, your under 10s team, let's say, my exercise selection probably wouldn't have been great. I would have kind of done things I would have been comfortable with coaching, but that could be a certain type of pass and warm, a certain type of possession drill, then go into like a defending exercise and then coach crossing and finishing, and it's a bit all over the place, not aligned, I would say. That would have been just as a comfort thing to coach the exercises that I felt comfortable with. Whereas I find now, and look, sometimes you slip in and out of being good at it, and sometimes you have bad weeks with it, where for example, with the team I'm involved with now, and again, it's not just me, obviously, it's the whole staff as well, massively help, where the sessions are as specific as they can be to whatever the topic is. Is the exercise always right? Sometimes maybe not, but the mentality of the coaching from me and the other staff is, if it's a certain topic, an attacking topic, that's the mindset for the week, let's say, if we've committed to it for a week. Whereas that would have been something when I started coaching, I would have just coached exercises I was comfortable with coaching, which meant I could be doing like a defending exercise, and then 5 minutes later I'd be doing crossing and finishing. So you kind of, that's the big thing. I think it's probably the two important things with coaching, in the sense that when I look at a coach for us at 1-to-1 or even with a team, it's personality first, in the sense that what's their manner like with whatever age group they're going to work with. So with us at 1-to-1, it's obviously generally younger kids, so do they have the manner to deal with them? And the issue I had, like I mentioned there, of not having great drill selection, is something that you see in young coaches now, but it's probably the easiest thing it's easier to fix that than it is to try teach somebody to have a personality. You can't really do that, I don't think, or to have a manner. You either have that or you don't, I think.
Yeah, that leads well into what I kind of want to touch on before we get into more of the club side of things, because you really are like a double-edged sword. You're like, obviously our head of football, but you're also the manager for, an under 17 elite squad. So there's definitely like a lot of fruit for people to really learn from, especially for the experience that you have and the badge or the qualification you have. Obviously, I don't think the badge really reflects how good of a coach you are. No, I'm not saying you personally, but like in general. But I think a lot of people would aspire to be you as a coach, if that makes sense. Have you ever thought about that? That's not the question I was going to ask, but I just kind of came up there. Like, think about it for a second. Like, top supplemental company, top gig, top badge, and you're not even 30 yet.
Nearly getting there, yeah. But I think what you said there at the end is the most important thing, and that's the one thing I think we probably all do struggle to remind ourselves with, is how young we are as coaches. And that's probably why I don't think the first thing is true. As in, I would still look at myself massively as a work in progress as a coach. Like you said, I'm 28 and I'm hitting 30 soon, but like, that's a baby coach. Like in a football playing term, we're like a 10-year-old who's learned his ball mastery. Like, there's so much more to go. So for me, that's my mindset currently, is trying to remind myself that every day is about taking information on. Like, I'd be sharing the sideline like with opposition managers who would have maybe some more experience than me in terms of years coaching, and you've got to respect that. I think it'd be very stupid of me to assume that as a 28-year-old who, yeah, like you said, we do what we do with supplemental coaching and getting to manage a national league team. I would be very stupid to assume that should be I don't know, how do I word this? That should be me, like, not dumb, but like, I know something people should aspire to, that kind of way. I'm trying to think of how to word it kind of better than that, but I nearly find I have to remind myself that I'm a young coach, because sometimes you can get bogged down with thinking either you know it all or just getting frustrated with your own like knowledge or your own kind of coaching. Like, sometimes after a session I might be frustrated with something. You nearly have to go, remember, you're like you'd say to a young player, you'll make a mistake. You kind of have to say that to yourself as a coach. It is tough as a coach because you've obviously a lot more responsibility with that. But yeah, I still look at myself as like don't say a baby coach, or like a work in progress coach is what I would say.
No, yeah, I get that.
'Cause it's so young. Like traditionally, coaches would be finish playing, then start coaching in their, let's say, early 30s. Whereas like the two of us, for example, coached since we were 16, 17. So you're talking like 12 years of experience, which is great because, and I think that the key difference that I think we would have is being able to work with multiple age groups. Sometimes you find people who finish playing and go into coaching in the 30s, they might find it tough to go all the way back down to coach with like an under 8s or 9s team. Now, look, that's obviously a case by case or context specific kind of thing. But I think since we've been coaching from such a young age, like when we started coaching at 16, it would have been with them younger ages, and you nearly, because you were closer to them in terms of age, you nearly knew what they liked in a session, and then you kind of carry that with you every year you kind of coach.
So what do you look for in a coach as a head of football here if you're recruiting for a venue or just to add someone to the team?
I think the first point I said is, well, sorry, if I was, let's say I'm reaching out to them for kind of the first point of contact, so I don't have any prior knowledge of them. So to be honest, Irish football, and this is a key thing, is such a small world where if I was going to meet you as a new coach this week, I would probably get 2 opinions of you from people who I would know or trust, who would have some way of knowing you. And that sounds a bit mad, but everybody knows everybody. Like, it's, if I don't know you directly or know of you, I know someone who's coached with you or coached against you, and it's something as simple as that opinion, which, and again, that could be wrong in the sense that I could get a very biased opinion of somebody, because it could be somebody who was on the sideline against you once. You were a bit mad on that day because we all, and I'm being guilty of this, like we can all go a bit mad on the sideline, and their opinion of you now as a coach is just negative. So you kind of have to be careful with getting that opinion. I do like getting an opinion or two of somebody and just getting a feel for what they're like. And then, to be honest, when you sit down with them, you probably know within 10, 15 minutes max of, first of all, you'll know what they're like as a person, which is really important. Like I said, you'll know what they think of themselves as a coach, which is important. Like, I've met or with coaches and things like that, and you can tell after 5-10 minutes that they want to tell me how great of a coach they are, which I get why they might want to do that, but I think that's a bad look nearly. I think nearly just finding out about the person is important. You can tell by the way they're talking to you what kind of coach they're going to be. Like, are they going to be there to serve the player or to maybe serve themselves in a way? And I think after that, once you get a good feel for somebody's personality, it's just about seeing them in action. So it's personality, I think, for me is massive. Like, it's one thing I'd say and would compliment all our coaches on is they're really good to be around. They're good personalities. We were only having a laugh there after the Swords camp today, just having a laugh and slagging each other off over little things, and just like there's loads of little in jokes now. I think that's actually what the summer camps have been great for, because we usually have coaches across different venues. Like, sometimes lads could be in with us a month or two and they haven't met some guys in other venues just because of the kind of how spaced out everybody is. Whereas the summer camps have been great because there's a couple of lads from different venues being around each other much more. We obviously the Wexford one, which was great. Me and you didn't get to go on, raging.
No, I was actually fuming.
Yeah, so was I. But you can kind of see that all developing, and that all comes from their personalities. There's no bad egg there. And again, they are really good coaches. I do believe that. They're not the best coaches in the world or the best coach in the country, I would say, but like obviously neither am I. Like, so it's more about the personality. And once you see somebody, then so you get to that stage, you've graded them to go, right, I'm going to have that's to get their foot in the door to go, right, we'll have a look at them. And then when you have a look at them on the grass, what you're basically looking at is what level they're at currently, which means what group we're going to put them in, or what venue, or what offerings we'll give them, because obviously we have different age groups and which they might suit, or different level of players, where like someone who's newer to coaching could have a great manner, be very tough to go and throw them in with one of our more advanced groups, because that group are used to like a certain type of coaching. So it's find out what level they are at coaching wise, and some of them, like you've obviously been there with some of them who after 10 minutes of coaching you just know they're the real deal straight away. And the next thing is what kind of potential you've seen them, are the easy things to improve. I think that's what we say. The amount of the guys who've come in and have been probably quite nervous in their first session, and then within 2 or 3 weeks they just have it. Like, it's the thing that that people struggle with sometimes with our sessions, and probably all the lads I would attest to it too, is working 3 hours of sessions into a venue or into a half pitch or whatever setup you have. And that's usually the thing all the coaches struggle with, and like I've struggled with it too with our sessions. So I know I'm kind of gone off topic a little bit there, but the main thing would have been personality. And then once you think the personality fit is good, it's about seeing them on the grass and seeing, right, are they ready to rock? Do they need X amount of training? Do they need to just shadow another coach? But that's all the easier stuff to teach, to be honest.
Has your opinion changed much on what is a good coach?
Since the start?
In general, yeah. Mine definitely has. Like, I like the way you said serve players. It's very interesting.
Has my opinion changed on what I would view a good coach? Yeah. Because I would have been guilty of, I think every young coach is, of when you are enthusiastic, you want all this information, so you'll go and get it, and then you'll think, right, I've got the info, and you just start shooting at players like nonsense, really. And you kind of, I would have been one of them who would have been guilty of, right, I seen a possession drill Pep Guardiola done with Barcelona or Bayern Munich or whoever it would have been at the time. I'm going to do that with whatever team we would have worked at, like under 10s or 12s, and it's like, did I need that? No, they probably just need a lot of 1v1, 2v2 games. Like, you sometimes get that stuff into your head. You think of the game very like rigidly, like it's system v system, which it is obviously, but at the end of the day, it's the player, like serving the player is important. And if the player needs more information, then that player needs that. If someone as an individual needs less information, then that, like, a good coach gets that right. They don't treat everybody like, and I know we say this, the one glove fits all. Like, that's a big thing I think young coaches, well, I would have been guilty of, is I'll just get all the information, give it to all the players, system will work then. Whereas realistically, the best coaches don't do that. They manage players differently.
One thing I used to idolize in coaches was like how well their session looked, flow, intensity, tone. And now looking back in it, of course that looks great to the naked eye. And then you'd see that there's dysfunction in their team. I'm not talking tactically, I'm talking like personally, poor relationships with players, a lot of churn, so a lot of players moving clubs. And then, now that can happen for a number of reasons. It's not just down to the coach, but I think as I've gotten older, what I think a really good coach does is connect. I think it's all about connection. So regardless of what drill you're doing, and I've kind of noticed this off the pros as well, we'd have an opinion on a coach or a manager or a team, but the players still love said manager, coach, or staff because they play them and they feel like they're respected in that group and they don't really care about anything else. That was a big eye opener for me. And I think that's kind of like one of the biggest shifts that I've seen is it's all about connection. However, manager can connect with player or staff member can connect with player. And that goes for coaches and managers. It's not like two different identities, because everything else is bullshit really. If the player doesn't fully feel like they're loved and there actually is a genuine connection, I think that's definitely the biggest shift that I've had.
I'd agree.
When it comes to the... Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say on that, and this is kind of a little bit off what you just said. When you said you'll see a session and it looks really good and clean, but it's what underneath that could be the issue. On that, this is more from a specific football point of view. Sometimes the session that looks clean is of no benefit to anybody. What I find sometimes is some of the better sessions I've had or some of the better drills you'll do is when it looks a bit mental and like the players are just dealing with that. So sometimes we can get caught in, this is like, not talking about the connection side, this is like purely from a football coaching point of view, where we do the passing part and there's no mistakes, we do the possession, there has to be no mistakes. It's not chaotic enough. And sometimes coaching is letting, like, good coaching is, if you're doing an exercise, understand that it might need, like if you're doing a transition exercise, you want your team to work on counterattacks, so you need the ball to turn over a lot. So you can't, after 10 minutes, go into your session and go, lads, this is poor, we're losing the ball too much. That's not the whole idea of your drill design is that there's transitions. So don't get frustrated with, well, now we're not keeping the ball well enough. Like that, sometimes the messiness kind of annoys coaches and they think, right, I have to go in and fix it, rather than going, is this what you wanted the drill to look like? Yeah, right, what do I need to actually help them with? the transition, for example. So I think that's another one. Scanning's a big one, where sometimes if you do a scan exercise, and I don't even mean like an unopposed one, like I've done a couple of possession based ones where there's like breakout rondos and it looks a bit helter skelter, should I say, chaotic, and you can nearly gotta let it happen because that's the nature of the game sometimes. Sorry, it's a little bit off topic to what you were saying.
No, spot on. So the last year where you actually won the 17's National League, I think is a very good case study for great management and great coaching combined, because there's definitely connection there with players, considering that you're not working with players and there's still a relationship there. But also, like, UCD, in terms of the underage setup, obviously is a great club and produces a lot of first team players, but at the underage levels, I would argue that it's not, I would say, in the public eye, a competitive title winning team, if that makes sense. Take us back to that year on a coaching and a management perspective. What did you do really well, and what did you do not so well that under reflection you made some sort of change this year?
It's a funny question because it's not, I know it is about coaching at the end of the day, but, and this is like I presented on B license course now for the FEI once or twice, and you're kind of presenting on what you do, and I'm kind of going off a little bit with this, but you get questions asked about, right, you do that with your team, why do you do that, and it always comes back to having good players and good characters. That's, you hear everybody says it. Roy Keane says it, like literally everybody says it, and that's important, because that's what we have, or had, should I say, in if we're talking about last year, and that's honestly like 80% of it. Obviously, I'm not alone in the coaching side of it. Really good coaching staff, really a lot of trust, I would think, in the coaches, in the sense that it would have been obviously myself, Shane, who we've had on the podcast before, obviously a big mentor of ours over the years, Jay, who's with me now still, and then like that, we had Dylan doing the analysis, we had Collie come in doing the goalkeepers and stuff like that, and I'm forgetting anybody, hope I'm not.
Oh, Willie at the top as well.
Well, yeah, Willie obviously at the top, overseeing it all. I think trust is the big thing, and this in the staff side of things, of if there's games where, let's say, I'm not there, you know that the lads are in good hands. Like, you know, that kind of way, and saying if Shane wasn't there, he'd know myself and Jay, or if Jay wasn't there, it'd be myself and Shane, or like that trust in staff is really important to carry out your function as a staff. So like we would have done a lot of unit coaching stuff, and that I would have worked at the midfield, Jay with the front three, Collie with the goalkeepers, Shane obviously with the back four, and it's trusting the different elements to come together. Like, and I think that's really important. It's probably not done enough. I understand it's tough in Ireland where you need to get more coaches in to do something like that, but if you can, it's massively beneficial, and beneficial in the sense that you're empowering your coaches. You empower your coaches, they're going to give more to the players. You give more to good players and who have good personalities, you're going to get something at the end. And even on the thing of, if we didn't win the league, would you look at the year unsuccessfully? No, because we had a great year with the lads, because they were a great group. Like, I know we made the point of like winning underage titles. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. You obviously, the players want to win games, and they should. Like, especially when they get to that 17 and 19 or under 20s now this year, they should want to win games because they're trying to get into first team football. We didn't coach the team to win our mindset coaching team wasn't to win the league. It was, how can we coach these players, play a system that suits these players, and that's a big thing where we didn't just go, right, we're a 4-3-3 team or 4-4-2, whatever it was. We adjusted to the quality of the players who were available or who were in form. And again, I see this a lot with coaches where your two strikers is a great example, because it's kind of formations have gone out of the game recently. But if you have two really top strikers and both in really good form, just get them on the pitch however you can. Whether it's 3-5-2, 4-4-2, whatever it might be, doing that at the right times was really important. And in fairness to Foxy, he got that right a lot. I don't think there was ever many games going into where you would look at it and think, geez, we got that. Like, I can think of one game in particular, we probably got it wrong with a system and we got punished. But apart from that, it was very rare that we went into after game, you come out and go, we picked the wrong player for that game, or we picked the wrong system. We tried to play players in their best position for the team, who were in the most form. I know that's a bit of a long-winded answer, but the key kind of things there are, it's probably the most important one, is the players you have is so important. The trust in the staff is really, really important, and then trying to get them decisions right at the right time. Like I said, there's probably once or twice maybe where we look back after a game when we got that really wrong there. From a staff point of view, whether it was what we worked on that week in training, what team selection we went with, what subs maybe we made. And then I know you at the end you asked what do I take into this year. Trying not to change them elements and trusting that process. Now that can be hard at times when you go through spells where you might be struggling a little bit to stick to, because them three things I mentioned are kind of consistent with most teams that are successful. So trying to implement them three things means you're gonna improve players because you're playing them in their what suits them the most and getting their kind of strengths out, and you're trying to stick to them three principles, like I said, because it can be tough when things aren't going for you, that you want to change something and think, right, maybe if I just change this shape to make us a bit more solid, not thinking about the players, thinking more about the team, but not like you should be thinking about the team as how to improve the individuals, not thinking about the team in the sense of how to get results. Because I think if you do think about the individuals and improve them, results will naturally come, or they mightn't, but it is underage football at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for you from a coaching point of view. Whereas if you go through a bad run, you start thinking about your coaching in a way of like, what can I change in the team to stop the rut? And that will usually be a negative change. It'll be, we'll defend a bit deeper, we'll defend a certain different way, we'll attack with less bodies in the box. Like, you always go negative when you're trying to stop a rut, because generally if you're in a rut, you're either conceding poor goals or you're not scoring enough goals, and your change is probably going to be a negative change because generally the conceding goals, to be honest, that you're trying to stop. And when you do that, you can end up coming away from the principle that you've set, if that makes sense. I know it's a bit...
No, it does.
Long-winded.
I think one thing that's very interesting that you know it there is that you can change formations on like the drop of a dime. Is that mostly an educational decision? And what I mean by that is, what you said there, you're not trying to coach to win games. Like, the coaching staff aren't concerned about winning the National League title. So are you along the lines of course, putting the best players that are in form to play, but are you choosing different formations intentionally to make sure the players get exposure to different formations?
Yeah, it's not like, right, we're going to play 4 weeks in a 3-4-3 and then you would... It's a tough one because I don't want to sound like a hypocrite here, but you do want to win games, and I'd set up a team like on a Friday. The team I'm going to put out on the Sunday is the strongest team that we feel can win a game, but I'm trying not to sacrifice the strength of the players or the players who are in form. So, like, say I always play a 4-3-3. That's kind of the easier example. Let's say, imagine I played a 3-5-2, for example, and I have a winger who can't seem to get into the team, but he might be. I'm trying to fit him into that system, but it doesn't really suit him. I might be playing against a team where I think they've got a weak fullback. I'm going to play a system that gets him as close to that fullback as possible. So then you might go, right, a 4-3-3. And I think being able to flip between systems isn't that you go, right, we're going to play it for a couple of weeks and work on the tactical side of it. I think it's more encouraging your players to be more freeing thinkers on the pitch and think about the game of more as a spatial game rather than a like tactics board game. And again, that's kind of hard to explain over a podcast. It's more on how you coach them. Like, I try to stay away from doing too many like overly structured phases of play unless I really need to fix something. So let's say it's a massively, like, let's say it's back four or struggling with dealing with crosses, getting overloaded, let's say. Then I might do something that's very much like a back four, midfield three, let's say. That's what we're playing against. Like, I do a more structured phase. But in terms of the shapes of it, more teaching about the players to understand the game as like space and the interaction of players within that space, because then it doesn't matter what system you play. An intelligent player who understands space and how different players interact on a pitch is going to be more important than going, right, you just know how to play in a 4-3-3.
That answers my next question, because I was going to ask, if you're periodizing in pre-season and you're trying to educate new players, because there is a lot of churn in like players move up age categories, players drop out of the league, players come up from different age categories within your club, and you obviously get external signings, etc. You're not doing, let's say, 10 weeks of 3-5-2 attacking, defending, and transitions. You're primarily focusing not on systems. You're focusing on space and the relationship between space and players. That's fluid.
Kind of, yeah. Now, I would still have a bit, I think this is more because the environment we work in underage football here is you generally have, 3, maybe 4 days with the lads a week. So I would have a base system to work off, but how you play it would change. As in, for example, let's say we're a 4-2-3-1. So with 2 6s, 10, out and out wingers, centre forward, back 4. So you might coach them in that base shape, but then some weeks you might go, right, it might suit us to play in a bit more of a back three. So how do we make a back three? Then I go, right, 2 fullbacks are the best fullbacks in the league. Drop one of my 6s in to make a back three, and the 2 of them got really high. But I wouldn't spend weeks coaching that. That would be like tweaks that you might do going into certain games to get them players in better positions for their game or for the game plan. And that's what I'm saying. I know it's kind of a bit of a contradiction, because you could argue then, right, you are over coaching the team to win a game of the weekend, whereas I'm seeing it like, where can I get my players' super strengths out on the pitch? What's Gary's strength? How can I get that to happen on the pitch and aid the team as well? But yeah, I think when I said relationships on the pitch, and it can sound a bit airy-fairy, but it's more teaching them about, and again, when I say the game of space, it's more that if you think in any, let's say a 4-2-3-1, if a fullback goes really high, the winger can't stand there, because that's where so the winger has to go somewhere. Where does he go? Goes into midfield and makes a box. That's just one idea. And it's the same across positions. If a deeper midfielder of the 2 6s, if he goes into a fullback area, the fullback isn't going to stand there. Where's he going to go? Maybe he goes infield if that's the way you play. Maybe you teach him to go higher to so it's just teaching them that when one person moves, it's like a chain reaction, and that doesn't matter what system you play. And if you, like, a top team gets to a point where, and you see it with City sometimes, and they're overly positional as a team. Like, I wouldn't coach a underage team like that. I think it makes sense when you have the best players in the world to do that, whereas like any of them players can realistically play in most positions in their system. I think teaching players that idea of when to rotate, when to occupy space, when to empty it for somebody else, and like you said, I wouldn't do like a 10-week periodization of, right, we're going to attack in a 3-5-3 like this, and then I'd have that base system of that 4-2-3-1, and it would be, if we're going to build with a 4, it'll probably be this, fullbacks go high, whatever, wingers might come in to overload, whatever way it might be, and I might go, and then sometimes we might want to play in a 3. So, and you might even ask players, right, how, like, and you could, I've done this with players before, where you go, right, how could we play how could we make a back 3 shape and get an overload in midfield? They'll kind of think about it, and they'll go, well, if we drop the 6 down, we're not overloading midfield, we're pushing our fullbacks, so we're getting the width in the wide area. So then they're like, right, how do we create an overload centrally? So push one fullback on, push a winger into midfield to make a box, and then swing to a back 3. And you get to that stage where the lads nearly understand when you change shape and change the information you give them, they'll naturally start carrying it out. Like with the group this year, we would base ourselves off a 4-2-3-1, but we've played with that swing I mentioned there with a high fullback and a winger inside. We flipped into a 3-4-3 because, to be honest, when we built in that 3 or that 4-2-3-1 with the swing, it ends up being like a 3-4-3, like a 3-box 3.
Yeah.
We've actually just played a 3-4-3, like just standard in and out of possession. Flipped to a diamond a couple of times just based on the games we were playing, and like that, not coaching the team overly on this is our system and it's not going to change no matter who we play against. I think you should adjust at times just to give the players something different, to be honest.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept because everyone talks about formations and systems of play and et cetera, but there's one thing that never changes. There's always 11 players on the pitch, and the football can be nearly categorized in a category of I have space versus I don't have space, or I have the ball versus I don't have the ball, and those like key functions don't change regardless of formation. So it makes a lot of sense to base your training sessions on that concept, that regardless of what formation we play, of course we're going to have a base, because if you don't have a base, you've nothing to work off. But if you, rather than like being so regimented in systems of play and in formations, getting a good understanding of space, rotation, you can adapt to any circumstance, which is really interesting. So that's obviously more tactical. What about the technical aspects? So you noted there that you have around 3 training sessions a week. There's a couple of key principles of coaching, especially underage players, that they're obviously not the finished product. So how do you incorporate technical skills and non-tactical skill sets within training sessions, alongside, of course, anything that's tactical?
Yeah, so the training week, how we try split it, we'd be Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, play Sunday. The Tuesday session is, they'd have gym as well, so we try to keep that session very buzzy and small sort of games focused. So it'd literally be the lads come out, do rondos, warm up, and then it'd be straight into either 2 tight possession grids, whatever it might be, and or maybe just go into little small sort of pitches. So it'd be like 1v1 pitches, and there'd be like 3 of them, so they're just working hard.
And are they topically focused?
Generally, yeah. So if it was, let's say, the 1v1 stations, if we were doing them, would be units. So let's say it was an attacking block, you would have your front 3 players doing a certain 1v1. It might be, I don't know, back to goal, or like a real tight one where they're working on their feints. Centre mids will work on one specific to them where it might have a scan in it or whatever it might be, or there's pressure coming from different places. Back 4, 1v1 pitches is generally like escaping a press, or they're getting pressed, and there's 2 ways. You can either play forward or switch the play kind of thing. Or if we're not doing them, you might do like 2v2 pitches, and you would either coach the attacking or the defending principles pretty much in that. Because again, if it's a 2v2 attacking game, and let's say your team, like you want to work on attacking this week, and you found that you're not getting enough third man runs in, do a 2v2 pitch with target press and just get loads of reps of third man runs, so that when they go into the sessions later in the week, they kind of have that conditioned into them. And then pretty much after that, we, depending on which coaches are in, we might do a little bit of unit work where if let's say it's Jay's in and Keane, who coaches with us now, Keane might take the back 4 and a couple of the midfielders, do a bit of back 4 stuff. And Jay might take the front 3 and 1 or 2 attacking midfielders and do kind of finishing stuff. And then they just do small set of games for the last kind of half an hour of the session.
So this is Wednesdays?
Tuesday.
So
it's pretty much all, like it's literally, that's pre-gym. So that'd be like an hour and a half, 5 to kind of 7. There won't be a lot of tactical stuff in it. It'll only be unit stuff, which will be pretty much just technical elements in relation to their unit, or it's a small set of stuff, which is just all technical skill. Wednesday, then, depending on numbers, we tend to mix in with the 20s a lot, just because it serves well with numbers, and we can do kind of just a hard condition session where they do a bit of like on pitch, like S&C running mechanic stuff with one of the kind of S&C coaches, for like 15 to kind of 25 minutes, depending on the week. Then they go into like 1 or 2 little like 2 possession grids, split the group up so they're getting decent contact, and then we go into like 11v11 and try to run it. So it's just not even, it'd only ever be tactical if either team had something really important to address. So you might have like leave a 35-40 minute block for that 11v11. You, like, let's say I wanted to coach something like our mid block or something like that. I was going to coach for 10-15 minutes, whatever kind of point I wanted, and then the last kind of 25 minutes you would just let it run and do kind of murder ball rounds. Maybe you might do like 3 5-minute rounds, and then for the last 10 just let it run straight out, like and that's kind of just giving them exposure to 11v11 for the week, just so that they're keeping that conditioned element.
But again though, the possession grids before you go into the murder ball stuff, is that also topically applicable because you're mixing with another team?
Like that, it kind of depends numbers wise what way we fall. If it falls where we've kind of got enough that we can keep the team split for that, it would, like, they would do their own possession grid and whatever they want to work on, and we would do our own one. If it mixes a little bit, you can kind of mix up. Some weeks we'll go, well, do you mind if I take the possession grid because I want to work on something in particular, and then they'll go, yeah, grand. Or it might be the flip where I go, can we try something this? And you kind of just got to go with that, because both teams get the benefit in the sense that you're training with a bigger group, so you're able to do 11v11. For our lads, for example, the 17's are obviously training with the older lads, which is great for them no matter what they're doing. They could be doing bleeding pin the tail on the donkey and they'll be getting benefit from it because they're working with older players. So yeah, just it would change week to week depending on availability players wise. And then the Friday session, again, it would mix up. This is kind of the problem in Ireland, where a lot of your Friday session has to be game prep for Sunday, whether it's patterns of play, set pieces, phases of play, whatever you want to do. I would still try keep a kind of have some sort of technical element, whether it's in the possession work where you might go your warm up passing pattern into and try to keep the passing pattern into possession relevant, or if it's a defending block, you might do like a little kind of pressing game, whatever it might be, and then it kind of can fluctuate for that kind of last block of your session on Friday. It might be patterns into small side of games, it might be patterns into set pieces, it might be small side of games into set like that will kind of mix up and change, but that kind of last half an hour, 40 minutes will be for the game Sunday, which if you were in a, like I've only kind of mentioned one session being purely technical development, no tactical stuff. If you were in more of a full-time environment, you'd nearly be doing that 3 days a week, because that's the thing the players need to kind of work on. I know JJ mentioned it on the podcast when he was on, that you go around the country and you can sometimes see teams set up great, but you can't see anybody get the ball in the half turn and play a pass forward. So that's, and we watch the Irish team, we see where we're limited at the minute compared to other nations. So if I could have my perfect week, there'd be a lot more of that kind of Tuesday session will be a bigger focus.
And where do you incorporate a lot of the technical stuff that we do with Training 1-to-1 into club sessions? So for example, with scanning, especially because you work with more elite players, and I don't use that word lightly because they are essentially the top grade players within the country. Where do you incorporate things like scanning or simple things like back foot receiving if you're addressing that to a whole squad?
The unit work is great for that. So sorry, sometimes on the Friday we might do the unit work. We might like finish up at, let's say, 7, and there's like 10-15 minutes where we still have the Astro. We might just all grab a couple of midfielders, like we'll go literally groups of 4 or 5. I would do a lot of it with, let's say, midfielders in particular. I would do it with them there, or with just analysis meetings with them. Like I'd sit down with them maybe after the Friday session, might have got them to clip some of their scan kind of awareness, so they might go watch the kind of 10 seconds before they receive the ball, and see how many scans they do, and then we'll talk about, right, why was that a good scan? Well, I scanned when the ball was moving, so I knew that I could get the ball in the half turn straight away. Or it could be the flip side, where I think I scanned it as the ball was travelling to me, and then that's why my touch was off, or whatever it might be. Now that's obviously very specific to my unit, but it would be the same with the other staff. And again, I can't overstate the two things enough of having good players and having good staff. Like I know that if Jay's doing his unit work or his analysis work with the boys, that it's top quality. It's the same with Keane, same with Collie with the goalkeepers, and that's so important, because if not, and let's say I didn't trust the lads at all, imagine I was having to try to do it all, then that's where people get caught out, where they try to go, right, I need to improve the scanning with Gary, so I'm going to have to work on it with the whole team. It's like, no, break them into their units if you have the luxury we have with good coaches, and that's where they'll get the exposure, because like you said, it can be tough to work on it in a team environment. If I know Gary, my midfielder, needs to work on his scanning, obviously everyone needs to work on his scan, but it's pretty pointless me doing an exercise just for you. Why not pull 3 or 4 of you out, nail that down? Well, Jay is pulling 3 or 4 out, working on whatever he wants to do with specific players. I think that's a big one. And like I said, the Tuesday sessions, see the small side stuff like 2v2s, 3v3s, 1v1s. A lot of them exercises you shouldn't even be coaching. I don't think it should be, here's the aim of this small side of game, get loads of reps in. You only should be coaching on maybe breaks to collect footballs. You might say, like, if you find you want to work on third man runs and one of your midfielders isn't reading that the ball is going to the top player early enough to play as the third man, they're reacting. When they're collecting footballs, you might just grab him and go, Gary, see, as that ball's travelling, what do you need to do? I need to get there a yard quicker so I'm ahead of my man. And then that's more, I wouldn't make a stop and make a massive coaching point on that, because there's no point.
But I was never taught that in Coach Ed. That's not a bash on Coach Ed, because I think it's shifting a little bit now in recent years, but it was all about like the stop, stand still aspect of, that was kind of like a 9v9 game, 77, but you could even say,
that's
like,
more to see your coaching process. Like, can you stop, control the session, get in, get your demo? Like, I think that was more for the process, but
I get you.
I very rarely would coach like that, and any of the better coaches I've seen I very rarely would see that doing that, unless they really had to address something.
Yeah, players hate it too.
Yeah, they don't like it.
Like, they hate it, and I can even feel the frustration of like playing amateur football and being freaked when someone stopped the session, because you're there for the flow, the competition, the competitiveness, the reps. Like,
I'm back to how it makes players feel in terms of coaching. Like you'd asked, how do you work on a specific element with an individual player? If let's say you do this whole 11v11 and the whole aim of this practice is to work on your scanning, all the other, too much, you can nearly embarrass the player that you're trying to focus on, because all the other players will be like, sure, this is for him. Whereas, and again, to the player who you're trying to coach it. To you, it looks like, oh, I'm making it all for you. But if I was that player, I would think, would you not just pull me out and do it separately? Because I think if you pull a player out or a group of 3 or 4 of them out, you're showing them that it's more intentional. It's more specialised because it's a smaller group. You're giving them more of your time rather than going, right, I'm doing 11v11. I'm just going to make one coach point for Gary because he needs to work on his scanning. Why not pull them out for 10 minutes after the session with 2 or 3 other midfielders? So it's not targeted at him, so to speak, but you're showing the player that you're more invested in it. You're showing it's really important to you if you're going to give your time to pull 3 or 4 of them out to work on something. And that comes, like I said, back to staff, having the staff to do that. If you're doing it by yourself, then if you pull one player out, it's, well, now he's favoured in that player. Whereas if you've got the staff to go, no, I'm going to take my unit, the lads take theirs, the players get that specialised feedback, they probably get more of it. And that's why players will always gravitate towards their unit coach if something's not going well. If they need feedback, it's, can I have a chat? Like, it's always with the unit coach, which is probably because they see them as the person who gives them, what would you say?
That connection.
The connection, because they give them more time, because that's the design of it. If I was to try coach everybody as an individual, it just wouldn't work. I wouldn't get enough in depth with anybody, which is why, to be honest, ideally I wouldn't want to necessarily be a unit coach. I don't mind doing it, obviously, but chatting to Foxy from last year, because he obviously done one of the units as well as the coaching side, and he kind of felt that it would have been better if he was just not doing one, so he could pick and choose moments when to go in and work with purely with individuals, which would be ideal. But then again, I'm being a bit too spoiled to ask for another staff member, so you got to work with what you got.
So what about a manager or a coaching staff that only have, like, for example, 2 people, maybe 1 person? Would a good idea be, now of course this is resource dependent with pitches and stuff like that, but I think all it takes is 15 minutes to run a really good exercise. Typically my exercises are anywhere between 15 and 20 depending on the age range, the caliber of player. Would a good idea be even just to take 5 players out, of course depending on time, for Tuesday, then the Wednesday, and then the Friday, for example, where you might not be able to get like all 18 players individual treatment or small group treatment, but at least they'll get it once a week. Like, all it takes is 15 minutes extra, maybe before or after a session.
Exactly. You could do something like, and you've got to be careful when you do this as well, where you might go, right, we've got me and you coaching the team. I might go, right, when you're doing the possession exercise, rather than me, I might take the 5 strikers out to do 10 minutes of finishing, or 5 midfielders to do 5 minutes of whatever it might be, scanning. I think that's a clever. I've sometimes seen, and I probably have done it, to be honest too, where you'd wait until the game at the end to take them out. That's the last thing you should take them out of. If you're going to take them out of something, take them out of the most generic thing, which might be like a possession drill or a passing pattern or whatever it might be. I think that's a clever way of doing it. If you only have 2, can you give the majority of the group to your assistant coach or the manager, whoever it is, to take, and then you might pull a couple out, and like that, if you do it Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 to 6 players, then you've given each of them players a little bit more contact, more specialised or individual contact across the week. Yeah, that would be a perfectly good way of doing it.
And just zooming out a little bit, what do you really like day to day about managing that group of players?
I don't think there's that an individual thing. To be honest, I would just say I love training. Like, I love training sessions. I love the being around the group, the staff, the players. I love that kind of sort of things. That's massive to me. I think it's a weird one. I would have been a coach who nearly preferred the training ground than the match day. I'm not like an overly, some people are like, oh, we live for the match day. Some players are like that, where they just want to play the match, which is fine. I would be more on the other side, nearly, where I love the training ground. I love getting into the nitty gritty with sessions, chatting with players about what way they think things can improve. And it's very tough to someone doing it on match day because everyone's focus is just winning the game. Whereas on a training session, you get more of a relaxed feeling, is probably the word, but more like, because it's underage football, it's more that kind of right development kind of mindset. What can we do in this session to make you better, for example? So I just love working with the lads on the training ground and with the players and the staff, I would say.
How do you foster the relationship and the connection between coaches?
Between coaches? I think always keeping your staff fresh is important. I think that's one thing I learned from from Shane, like how I ended up coaching UCD way back when they done the 13's league, was we were doing 1-to-1 in Strafford. You were obviously working with him at the time as his assistant. It was actually one of the first times I met him. He pulled up and he was chatting to you about something, and I just happened to be there. And he said something along the lines of you needing somebody to record a trial or something like that. Remember done the big trial and been ill this, and I was kind of like, I'll do it. And he was like, yeah, grand. He's happy to bring me in. And then over the years, obviously, our relationship developed massively. But that idea of, that's one thing I learned a lot from him, is the idea of keeping it fresh. Bring in either a new staff member if you can't. Like if you lose a staff member, can you bring in someone new? And can you bring in someone young? Who's like, your staff should always have, I feel, a young coach who's there to learn, because what they'll do is they'll ask a lot of questions of you, which is good because it keeps you on your toes, to be honest. That's a massively important thing. And we've always had that. We've always had an inquisitive coach in the staff who will always kind of want to learn things, which means they'll keep questioning things, which just keeps everything more honest. And that's important. And I think if you want to build a relationship with your staff, you have to trust them with things. Like, for example, let's take Jay, for example. He's obviously the assistant with me this year. Like, our relationship has just grown massively, and it's generally been a trust thing of, what do you think of this? Let's say he asked me, and I'll go, yeah, I think this, and he'll either run with it. Like, he could ask me about a unit session, or on the flip side, I could ask him about team selection or shape or whatever it might be. It's been points in a game where my head's been nearly fried with like a ref decision, or just in the moment of the game of just keeping the energy high with the team. I might go have a look at what change of shape we could have here, and he'll just go off for a couple of minutes, might look at a tactics board, we'll come up with a notepad, have a different shape of players, and I'll go, yeah, let's roll with that. But that's a trust thing. If I didn't trust him, I wouldn't even ask him to do that. And I think that if you trust your staff and give them, depending on how competent you feel they are, giving them little nuggets to show that you trust them, of, can you take this important part of the session? Can you take the phase of play? Do you want to give the team top before the boys go out? Do you, like, right, we're going to change something tactically here. You come up with an idea, like, come up with a set piece, whatever it might be, like, give them more responsibility. That's always going to build a relationship, because you're letting them in a little bit more. Whereas if I was to go, here's how we're going to play, it's always going to be this way, the sessions are always going to be like this, I'm always going to take the phase, you're always going to do the warm-up, like, you've got to mix it up a little bit, I feel. And that's how you build trust with staff, because, well, that's what I hope has happened anyway, is you bring them along with you. It's important.
Yeah, it's quite common. I hear a lot about other staff members in teams not having any role within training sessions. They're kind of just like cone pickers, and these are good people with a lot of knowledge and experience, and it fractions staff, but I think players can pick up on it as well. Players smell blood a mile away.
Yeah, I agree. Like, for example, let's say, and I use this example sometimes, where Jay might be taking a possession drill. If I see something that's really annoying me in it, I'm not just going to go and burst in and start coaching it. I'll wait till a natural stoppage. Like, let's see, he's go there, collect more balls, and I'll come up to Jay and go, do you mind if I pop in and say something? And be like, yeah, Grant. And be the flip side for him, I might be doing a phase of play, and he might go, next time I stops, I want to talk to the centre forward, I'll be like, Grant. And then I'll just make up something to say to a couple of other players to give them time. But that idea of not undermining staff is so important. Like, obviously, an assistant shouldn't undermine a manager and go around whispering to people saying, oh, I don't know why he isn't picking you. Like, but on the flip side, a manager shouldn't then, like, cause I've been on coach courses with the FAI and all, and to be a lot of kind of guest talks, or some of the guest talks would be on being an assistant manager, not undermining the manager and all. The flip side is the manager can't undermine the assistant openly. Like, it would be a mental thing to do, to like that, just in the middle of your assistant doing a drill, you just go in and start barking orders, because the players, like you said, smell that. They smell that a mile away. They'll just know that, well, it doesn't really matter what this lad says to me, because him over there is the final say. Whereas and again, I'm saying I hope I don't make it like that. The lads could sit here and tell you something different, but that's the aim. Hopefully. Yeah,
I know we're talking about like an under-17's team here, but like even like an under-9 can sniff out if someone doesn't have legitimate authority in a team. Like if it's two people managing a team, let's say like manager and assistant or whatever, and the manager's constantly cutting across the assistant, taking maybe, like, it doesn't even need to be like a big compelling event. It could just be simply taking all the session, doing all the talking, and then the moment that the assistant says anything, people just tune out instantly, because there isn't that cohesion amongst the group. If anything, that person is like an out member They're kind of like shun away. I do think though, like you obviously need to earn players' respect, regardless if you're manager, assistant, or third coach or whatever. But I think there is a formula in staff that's led by the manager to make sure that all players understand the hierarchy. I don't think people really think about that. You know, how much influence decisions like that really impact players, because you know they're the best gatekeepers in the world. Like nothing can get past them at all. They just sniff out everything. Do you fear anything on match days, or do you worry about anything before games where you'd lose sleep?
Do I worry? What? Funny, in terms of sleep, I've actually never been a bad sleeper. I'd usually be worse the day at, like the night after a game. I wouldn't be bad the day before. It's more so the day after where you're like thinking about what has happened. Yeah, so, do you want a list? What are you afraid of? Fucking everything, nearly. Like someone goes down injured in the warm up. What's the change there? What, like everything? You're 2-0 down after 5 minutes. You're 1-0 up going into the 90th minute. Like it's. I think, and I'm nearly worse when it's, and I've said this to players, where it's a team you feel you should beat, for example, because there's way more pressure on you then. Especially in Dublin football, where like that, if you don't beat a certain team, everybody's talking about it. If it's a game you should have won, for example. Whereas, and for players, it's trying to make sure they're up for them kind of games, because they're the kind of ones that if you want to be a player, win something, you've got to win them kind of games. It's easy to get up for the bigger games. So yeah, like a big fear would be just going into every game. It's just the unknown every time. Like honestly, this year has been mental for things in games, in the sense of just injuries and warm up. I think we've changed. Is it 3 or 4 people in warm ups with injuries? A lot, like right at the end of warm ups, little things like that, which I'd never really experienced that before. Even I don't even think last year it might happen once. Things like that going into games, like we've been 1-0 down after 2 or 3 minutes. We've been winning games going into the last couple of minutes, and you're trying to see it out. On the flip side, this is a weird one, a tough one, where you're like drawing games going into the last couple of minutes because the lads want to go and win it, but you're kind of like, is a draw good? Like what way? You're kind of just, you need some freeze because you're like, I don't even know what's the right thing to do here. But yeah, I can't list off one thing. You're fearful of a lot of things going into games.
It's funny you say that, because the decision is based on what's best for the game. Winning is a very interesting one. I think the only way you can describe the winning and development argument is winning's not important, but the will to win is. I think people should put the correct frameworks in place. As you said, put the best players in the best position to impact the game as much as possible with the outcome of winning. But I think the mindset the manager has to be win, lose, or draw. If we stick to what's the formula to make everyone the better player tomorrow, then that's the objective. But you raise a good point there. Like you're drawing a game. Let's say, for example, you only need a point to get into promotion spots or get ahead of that team or whatever. Like, although you're making like a proactive decision to win the football match, even if you lose that game, where's your mind at? Is it I lost the match, or the team lost the match, or is it that wasn't the right decision for future reference, for development? Tricky question.
I'm bad after
losses.
Bad result, not even a lot of bad results. So let's say even a draw that you think you should have won. I would be bad on the day, just because it's not like even at individual players or anything like that. It's
a natural human emotion, though.
Kind of like the whole group, like as in, and that includes coaches and myself. Like just because you have a lot of responsibility, because again, you're responsible, let's say, as the manager, for your staff and your players. And like that, if it's something you've done wrong in terms of a decision, then you're impacting all of them. But yeah, I'd be bad the initial day or the day over, let's say, if it was a bad result. And to be honest, but a Tuesday session, you've just got to dust yourself off and go again. That's why I keep the Tuesday session buzzy. It's good for coaches as well, just to get in and go again. Because like you're only as good as your last game. So if you won a game, you just need to go again. If you lose, you need to go again. If there is something specific that we as staff maybe would have made an error with, then it's a learning opportunity. But I would be quite bad after bad games, bad results, we'll say.
It's a
Or
good
bad
point.
outcomes.
That's a really good point on Tuesday. Like you want your players win, lose or draw looking forward to the next session. Now that's going to be a reactive 1 hour analysis session. You've lost everybody.
Yeah, because, and again, the only time we've actually done analysis on the Tuesday was this week because we had a Wednesday game and it was going into the Wednesday game.
Yeah.
We'll try not to do analysis till the Wednesday or the Friday. Like the Tuesday session is about getting them in. Whether we've won, it's just about getting the intensity back up. Whether we've lost, it's about, right, let's make it a buzzy session. That's what we do. The small side of games kind of tournament every Tuesday, just, well, when we have the fit body for it, just to keep the sessions buzzy as possible. And for the coaches, because imagine you've had a bad performance, you've been fuming about it Sunday, then Monday you're planning a reactive session for Tuesday and you go out and deliver this reactive session, you're kind of just bringing up old news. Like, what you would try to do is, if there was something really a big issue from the game, so let's say something with your back four, whatever it might be, you might go to the unit coach and go, look, they struggle to deal with crosses, so throw a lot of crosses at them. But you're not making a big deal of doing 20 minutes of analysis on it. You're just giving them reps on something that you think they needed. If it's the front three missed 10 one-on-ones, you go, right, give them a bit of finishing and make it successful if you can, and make it buzzy so that they just get the joy of it back. But that's trying to be clever with your coaching and doing that, rather than making a big reactive phase of play about what happened on Sunday. Leave that till, because by the time you get to the Friday, you could be thinking, when you've watched the game back maybe and you've chatted to your coaching, you'd be like, that actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was. And then you're like, right, what do we need to improve going into this weekend? Because if you react, you could work on something on Tuesday that wasn't even that bad from the game. You've just convinced yourself it was bad. And the game's never as bad as you thought it was, is another thing. Like, I'll come out of Sunday games just being like, really poor, this. I watch the game back and go, it actually wasn't that bad. We just, a couple of moments caused us, for example. Yeah,
I was going to ask how important is footage, but I think you pretty much answered it there. Want to touch on recruiting a little bit. What's your policy for recruiting? And can you tell me a little bit about how you manage recruiting as a manager? Players specifically, not coaches.
Players?
Yeah, how do you recruit players?
For me, to be honest, it wouldn't have been like something I would think I'm particularly strong at. I think you need to have a bit of a kind of snake oil salesman kind of mindset, and I kind of struggle with that, to be honest. I try to be as honest as I can, and sometimes you need to go past that. In terms of recruiting players, it's more what fits into what you already have. So where are the holes in your squad that you need to improve? Do you need to bring competition into certain positions is another key one. Sometimes you could have two great centre halves. Do you want to just go with them for the year? No, because they'll end up getting complacent. The best thing you can do is bring in another two really good centre halves and make it competitive. But yeah, I would say I struggled with the aspect of like selling a pipe dream to somebody, because I don't think you should, but I think you do need to, how would you say, play the game a bit with it. Whereas I'd be bad at that. Yeah.
The whole world of sales, because recruiting is sales. Most things are sales, but it is interesting. Like, players oversell themselves, clubs oversell themselves, and I find it very interesting where clubs make the same mistakes all the time with players, and when players are nearly burned, and people still use the same processes. But I think a lot of clubs and teams work off the formula that if one player is right out of 100, it's a successful strategy. Especially even if you're talking financially, if that one player makes a move, they can take gambles like that. So why not like sell the pipe dream? But again, that's a mindset thing. Like, if the club is all about getting, a signing that's like 200k across the UK and securing first team licenses for the next couple of years or whatever, then it makes sense to sell the pipe dream. But if that's not the club's philosophy, especially around compensation, then it doesn't make sense to sell a pipe dream. And it obviously depends on your personal ethics and morals as well. Because if you sell somebody a pipe dream and you know that you can't live up to that product that you sold them, that would definitely chip away at me day to day. It's
a bit like, do you know when you get tapped in the box and you make more of the contact than it is? You've kind of got to do that. You've got to oversell what you do always. I just think I'm bad at it. Or not great at it, should I say?
Yeah, recruitment's a dance. The hardest thing sometimes is picking up the phone, I find. And and making contact, which I say a lot of it, especially when I was younger, was definitely like a fear of
You need to
rejection.
convince yourself that someone would just go, Asher, why would they go move, let's say, if it's a football context.
Yeah, it's a fear of rejection. And it's definitely, how do I package the offer? What are we good at? What are we doing differently to other teams? But I find like a lot of, that's the thing as well, like a lot of recruitment in football is very much inbound. Like a lot of players will jump from club to club. You don't even need to do like a lot of outreach. Players will just come in. What I find very interesting is I think players don't do enough due diligence for their own recruiting. So their own club selection. I feel the best way, like if I was to advise any player on choosing a team, is never to like sign for like a club. It's always to sign for the immediate manager and what you're going to get out of it for that short-term period, because you're just you're only signing for a season. Now, the ideal world is you have a club for life, ideally. But that manager's signing you for a year to do a job. You're signing for that team for a year. So you want to extract as much value out of that manager as possible and the players as possible. So why not try to get into as many teams as possible and then make a decision? I find players will just jump from club to club based on they're winning matches, they're going to get me an Irish cap, they're going to do X, Y, Z. And it's a very short-term idea. Now, that kind of contradicts what I was saying there, that like you're only signing for the year and it is short-term. Why not go to the best club and get in the window as quick as possible? That makes sense, but
like some of those players sign for what's happened in that club previously.
Yeah.
Whereas they kind of don't look at, like you said, the most important person when you're signing for a club is your son or daughter going to get on with the manager and the players? The manager or the coaching staff being important, because if they go in somewhere and the coaching staff don't fancy them as a player, that's never going to end well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the club has done in the last 10 years with players. It's, like you said, it's all about the short term in terms of the here and now of, and you said it with some of the senior players you would have dealt with, and I'd be the same, where some of them would go to coach to managers who they just had a good connection with. It's so important. And I think people get that wrong a lot. And look, it's tough for a 14, 15-year-old to see that. It's probably more on the parents to try see that side of it and try read people, but that's tough as well. Like, we've all got it wrong with people where you think they're one thing and then
it's very
they turn out being another thing,
It's always very, like, you'd never change your phone brand as quick as you would your son's football club. Like, I'm
still the same phone number since I first got a phone.
But like same like Apple. Like, I've been Apple loyal for like 10 years, and I always find it very funny because the messaging that's going out to the marketplace is that the world's on fire and you have to get into the best clubs as fast as possible. And that picture changes for every age group, for every year, and every team. It's like a lottery. It's like, these are the best teams this year. These are the best teams this year. These are the best clubs this year. These are the best managers. And you all chop and change. It's like a Rubik's Cube. And you can't pick and choose what's the best. It's not particularly a well-regulated industry, football. Like, it's so difficult to choose a team that you're going to be, that if you sign, you're going to get something from it. There's way too much inconsistency between teams.
I've literally had or heard of situations before where players have went to a place knowing, and have gotten references about the manager or the club, whatever it might be, and have gotten bad references off people they know, or and they just still do it anyway.
I know.
Which I think that is bizarre. Whatever about if you're kind of new, you don't really understand. It's your first kid, let's say you've gotten to that level, and you don't really not have a lot of skin in the game, and you make that decision off the bat. But I've seen people get strongly advised against things, and they still just do it anyway. I kind of less sympathy when that happens, because again, it's your credit, and this is kind of what I say to people. If I was recruiting a player, as honest as I can be, is I will improve your son or daughter as a footballer. That's my aim. You can ask previous players who've worked with me or previous parents, is that what I'll try to do? Yeah. Will it always work out? No. But I think you build a credit as a coach over a couple of years, where, let's say in 5 years' time, let's just imagine I've managed for another 5 years at roughly the same level. I'll have a kind of cohort of 200 people, 200 parents or whatever, who can go and either say yes or no about me. And if more of them are yeses, then that should be a strong indicator to someone I'm trying to recruit to go, well, I've asked Gary and Darren and Morgan, they all had a son who trained or who played with him and they had really good feedback. Then that should be that's a clever way to recruit. As in, if that was
long-term.
me as a parent, like that's what I would be looking at. I would be getting as many trusted opinions as I can. But then some people could say you need to go with your gut sometimes. That's probably something I'm guilty of, where I wouldn't always go with my gut. I'd nearly want your opinion and your opinion and your opinion before I make a decision. Just want to be well informed, but then sometimes that's kind of counterintuitive to what you should do when it comes to decision making.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And kind of going back to like that market idea, like even if you take like the car industry, for example, like to someone that doesn't even own a car, they still know what a good car is. But to people coming into football with a young child, they have no idea what are the good clubs, what are the good teams, who are the good people. And people are going to make impulsive, irrational, emotional decisions because they don't have the information and education. And I think that's something that clubs don't do well here. They don't educate people on what they do. They don't showcase it enough. Yeah. And they are relying on sneaky sales oil. What's the word you said? Sneaky snake oil sales tactics to sign players, and it ends brutally because the expectation of the player and the parent that's signing and the expectation of the coach is entirely disconnected. Whereas education is the only thing that bridges that gap. If you buy a Ferrari, you know exactly what you're getting. If you're buying a third-hand 1990 car that's been sitting in a dumpster for a year, you know what you're getting. And it's so difficult to make that, I'm going to call it a purchasing decision, because that's what you're doing. You're investing resources and time. It's so difficult. So my advice to clubs and people with that is to really educate people on what you're doing. The problem is with football is that every single team is a different product. There's very little consistency between what your 13s looks like and what your 20s looks like. It's very difficult to bridge that because it's all people orientated.
Yeah, and it's tough because of the part-time nature where like you have clubs where they might train in different places, so you don't have a lot of continuity, where like sometimes the coaches of the 14s might never have met the coach of the 20s because it's just the way they train and all. And that's part of the issue in Ireland, where since it's so part-time and everyone's here, there and everywhere, whereas if everyone at least was in the one training base in every National League club, you would have at least an identity and you'd be able to see a lot more, right, that 14s coach isn't really fitting what we do here. And you would get a lot more continuity with that, which would hopefully breed more, how would you say?
Consistency,
yeah.
Consistent product.
In the product, yeah.
Yeah, like some clubs have great brands here. Like, even like to name drop, like I think, to be fair, what Shamrock Rovers have done from their academy at like 5s to the first team is relatively consistent compared to other teams. So if I was a parent looking from the outside, like I would definitely be looking at like, what are the first team doing? Does it kind of like reflect what their academy's doing? Now, of course, there's going to be cracks in between, and everyone knows that with different clubs. But like branding is very important, I think, on a subconscious level for recruiting decisions.
I think, massively.
I think it influences parents a lot.
Yeah,
I'm not saying that like Rovers are the be all and end all of a club. I think we all have our opinions on, you know, working with different teams across all different clubs. But I feel like the power of brand is very important. Subconsciously, people will always gravitate to what they think is best out of the gate, and that's going to generate a lot of like inbound requests to join your teams. But the reason why I want to go on the recruitment aspect was like, did you rely on inbound players because of the network that you have, or is it outbound? But I think most good recruitment is always a combination of both.
Yeah, would have been, yeah.
And luck as well. A player comes across your plate at the right time, develops the right time, they're in the right location, right personality, right fit, and you got to be. Sometimes you just need to reach a hand. And I thought what's funny as well with recruitment is that some players don't even think they're good enough. So let's say, for example, you're 17 and you're signing a DDSL player. They might have buckets of ability, but they never played National League football. So they instantly have this opinion of themselves that they're not going to be good enough to get into that team. So you need to reach out to that person. They're never going to come inbound.
Yeah.
So you have to actually put the hand out, which is always important. And it's okay. Like, there's never a problem in picking up the phone and ringing somebody. Especially, I think this is where the snake oil salesman type of thing kicks in. Every time you pick up the phone, you're not trying to get a player on the dotted line. You're just inquiring. Like, you're nearly qualifying. Like, are they a good fit? And it gives the parent a chance to qualify if you are a good fit. I think people always like forget about that when they're ringing. It's not like I'm going to be sold to, or I'm going to have to get like a pitch put on me. It's like we're just kind of sussing each other out, like.
Yeah, sus now.
And the only way, like, and again, it just builds good. Like, it's such a, as you said at the start of the podcast, it's such a small network. It's great to even build contacts. Like, I remember I rang a parent at under 13s, didn't sign, didn't even come into the training pitch, but came in and trained with us, trained 1-to-1, and felt like they had a reference to even just like make contact and say, can I come in and train?
It's all about the network, isn't it?
And that came in through the network, yeah. So, like, there's always good bridges there. But yeah, I think that's a good wrap. It's been about an hour.
Yeah, I need to finish it because it's interesting when you do, and obviously we'd have guests on, and it always paints quite an idyllic kind of how would you say setting or scenario. And like I said, I'd done these talks on a B license there a couple of weeks ago, and it's funny. The presentation looked great. You get great feedback after.
This is your B license presentation.
Not my B that I like, as in I presented on one a couple of weeks ago.
Because you talked about that earlier. Like, you're doing a presentation for B license people.
So yeah, I done one and like that. You get great feedback, and it was brilliant. This, that, and the other. Can you send it across and all this? Like, I done it on attacking principles of play, let's say, and then like the next 2 games we lost 3-0 and 4-0. Like, I just find that funny because you do this presentation, it's like, that's great, geez, he's brilliant, and then couldn't score fuck off for 2 games then. But it's just funny because, and I think that's important on context of coaching. You can sound great in interviews, you can say all the right things. At the end of the day, it's some people will look at me as a coach who have worked with me and think he's not really like that. He's a fucker. I don't like him, and that's the game. At the end of the day, all you've got to stay true to as a coach is that you know you're trying your best. And again, my best, like I said, as a 28-year-old coach, is going to be a hell of a lot different to when I was 16. Is a hell of a lot different to what it will be when I'm 38. I think that's really important because I'm trying to do what I think is my best practice at the minute. But I just thought it was a funny example to mention because it can all come across great, and then like that, done an attacking presentation that looked great and couldn't score a goal for 2 weeks. That was funny.
You're a modest dude, Gary. You always were. I don't know. I've been working with you since you were 16, and I'm very proud of. No, I'm very proud of how far you've come, because I think I've been involved. This is the first team I haven't been involved with you directly, where you've been without me. I think, bar the one that you won the league. So maybe I was the catalyst. That was the problem that we had to eradicate to win the league.
I was actually bringing in Jay. I was bringing in a good Wexford. Well, Colley's where's Gorey again?
Wexford.
Is it?
Oh yeah, like central Wexford.
Oh, bringing in 2 good Wexford men then.
Yeah.
That was the catalyst.
It's the best county in Ireland. Not even from there.
I suppose because you have the mobile. So, thanks, Gary.
I enjoyed that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks.